Welcome to another episode of the Dream On podcast. Yours truly,
Travis Gentry.
and
My co-host, Julia
co-host.
Gentry.
Who called me the co-host?
My guest today is Julia Gentry. So today we're going to start off with something, and maybe we're going to continue it on each podcast, is that we're going to ask each other just a random question, just to have fun, just off the cuff. You have to answer.
Today, so I have to answer it today. This is not.
You have to answer it today.
This is not a retaurical question for them. This is a question I have to answer.
Well,
today.
you can ask yourself. So I'm going to ask Julia. She's going to answer it, and maybe you can ask yourself because it could be pertinent to everybody, or maybe not.
I'm kind of nervous. Travis always asks me, "Do you like surprises?" I'm like, "Well, it depends. It depends on what the surprise is."
What are we talking about today?
Well, I thought you were going to ask me the question.
Okay, I just didn't know if we want to give context.
We'll get there. No,
okay.
You have to stay. You stay to the end, and we'll tell you what we're talking about today.
All right. So my question of the day is: who is the last person that you've judged and why?
Who is the last person that I've judged and why? Well, so why I'm pausing is because I probably judge more often than I should. I can't say. I don't know that I can say.
You have to say.
I can't say.
Why?
Because.
But why do you judge them? I think that's also.
Okay, I'll tell you why I judge this person.
Okay.
Is this because it's something that I'm doing in my own life too, and I need to really look at it?
100%. Most of the time, it's a mirror.
I actually talk about this in my book. This is chapter on protest. So I have a person in mind that I've actually been doing a better job at noticing my judgments because you and I have been practicing so much on this. Mm-hmm. But this person prays their way only. My judgment is you only pray through your problems. Mm-hmm. You don't actually do something through your problems. And I've noticed this for a while because I am probably the opposite. So I don't pray often as I should through my problems. I just do through all of my problems. Mm-hmm. So the person I've been judging is the opposite of me. We might tackle, the same core issue of not knowing the answer. I do a lot. They pray a lot, but I judge them because I feel like their prayer is a scapegoat
as opposed to actually taking
action, like the sandwich approach, right? Like in my mind, prayer is the beginning and the end, and your action is the in between. And I feel like their only sandwich is the bun. There's no meat because it's only prayer as opposed to like strategy and technique and getting things done. Moving.
So you're saying
mine's bunless. My approach is bunless. So I'm not suggesting this is right. This is where I've had to like really lean in because I'm looking at my burger. And I've had no bun for many years, but I would say that the person and people that I tend to judge is a meatless bun.
I'm not following you on the whole burger bun thing, but we'll run with it. So ultimately, and the reason why I asked that question is what you said. It's typically a mirror. It's someone that you judge that is either doing something that you want to do or doing something that you don't want to do. That's similar to you.
Yeah.
And so you're saying ultimately, like you want to find that middle ground.
Yeah.
And press into prayer more and not just your own will.
Correct. And then equally, if that person
could swing a little bit to the other side and take some.
Yep.
Yeah. Faith without works is dead.
Yep. And so works without prayer is only going to get me so far.
Yeah. So there's kind of a, depending on the situation, you can implement both.
Totally.
Good.
Man, I feel like my body does not like this. I think that we should stop doing this.
Doing what?
Random questions on the spot.
We just started.
Okay.
That was the first time we've done it.
Okay, good.
And we're going to continue to do it.
Let's maybe not do it anymore.
Okay.
So let's actually dive into what we're talking about today. And today's topic is an ongoing series. It's part of an ongoing series in this conversation of quitting your way to success, where Travis and I are unpacking these theories around it's not just about acquiring new information or doing more things or adding more things to our plate in order to be successful and fulfilled. It's actually about looking at what are the things that we have to quit doing that are no longer serving us in order to be successful. So today we're going to talk about people pleasing. Do you know this is one of the #1 hits on all of our videos right now on YouTube right now is this topic of people pleasing too?
Really?
Yeah, people want to know about this. So we're going to talk about people pleasing.
And you are an expert in understanding and seeing people pleasing.
Yeah.
I would not say that I run in that lane of being a people pleaser, but I would think, and I know that you have dealt with this a lot because we're working with your clients and seeing hundreds, if not thousands of people now. That is a common thread.
Huge common thread. And I am with you that as I already aired my dirty laundry, that I'm a recovering judger. That would be a lane that I really need to work on is my judgment. But people pleasing, like you, is also not a lane that I find myself in often. Not that Travis and I are null and void of any weak characteristics, but this is not one of them. And I do think that it's worth talking about because I think it's a huge prohibitor to not only success, but chasing your dreams and getting out of the fear of the fear of what other people think. So we're going to talk about this today. Buckle up.
And I think now, like as we dive into this, I think that there's, there's different, going back to our last episode, it was about alcohol. And I think that a lot of people just kind of bringing that piece in is that a lot of people can use alcohol to mask people pleasing because they'll go to an event, they'll go to situations knowing that they can have a drink to be able to kind of disconnect from that. So it's almost like double sabotage.
Double sabotage. But I think it's important for us to kind of talk about like what is people pleasing, right? What is it? What do we think the root cause of it is? So that's what we're going to do today in no particular order and in no perfect rhythm. And this is not a 1, 2, 3 step guide to stop people pleasing. This is just a conversation around what it is, why it's happening, and how to ultimately stop it. So for those who are listening, join the roller coaster of all the things that we're going to talk about today. So where I want to start is, in your mind, what do you think people pleasing is? What is it, and or why do people do it?
It's a way to get validation at the sacrifice of your wants and desires.
Okay, write that one down, ladies and gentlemen. Way to get validation at the sacrifice of what? At the sacrifice of your own needs?
Yeah, your own needs and wants and desires.
Oh man, that's gonna blow some away. You guys, every once in a while Travis drops these bombs. He did this in many episodes ago when we were talking about vulnerability. I quote you all the time, even just talking about what vulnerability is, which in Travis's definition is bringing someone into your process. Huge. Okay, people pleasing. It's a way to get validation from other people at the sacrifice of your own needs and desires. 100%.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us.
Figure that on your own, okay? So here's why I think that is so interesting is that I also think that the people pleasing is a slippery slope because most believe that we do it because we love people. And I don't think that that's true. I don't actually, though we might love people, I don't think that we're people pleasing because we love people. I think we're people pleasing because we are afraid of their rejection and their criticism. And so in theory, people pleasing is not out of love, it's out of fear. So I don't know that that's a definition, but if we were to double click on your definition and go, what the heck does that mean? I think that the root of people pleasing is fear. I'm afraid of what you think. I'm afraid that you won't love me. I'm afraid that you won't accept me. I need your validation so much that I will give and give and give and give and give for you, but actually not from pure motives. It's from a fear-based motive.
100%.
And now I'm giving it at the sacrifice of my own needs and desires, which I may or may not even know or recognize because I'm paying so much attention to yours.
Yeah. And we've kind of unpacked this with people before, where you see it and it's a common thread and it circles back around to exactly what you just said and what I'm saying. It's a fear of, if I say no to whatever that is, if you're asking me to help out, and if I say no, you're going to reject me. You're going to be mad at me. You're going to disconnect from me. As opposed to looking at it and just saying and laying the groundwork of like, for people, is my yeses mean yes and my nos mean no? It doesn't mean anything. But we as people start to tie something to it. So if I say no, then my story starts to run of rejection and fear, and they're not going to like me, or I'm not going to be a part of this community or group or whatever if I don't agree or go along with.
Which is so interesting if we think about this. I think one of the hardest things that's going to make any of these habits that we're talking about hard to let go is that it works. So even for those people who might be listening going, oh crap, I do this all the time. I even call myself a people pleaser, which is, to your point of me working with hundreds and thousands of people on this topic, people actually see this as a characteristic of themselves. They see this as a part of their identity. I'm just a people pleaser. That's who I am. And what that does is it actually causes you, all of your actions and behavior towards other people, to just now be on autopilot because I see myself as it, so I'm just going to act like it. So I take no responsibility to fix it. I don't take any time to look at where it comes from. I don't try to troubleshoot it. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just keep doing it because that's the way that I am.
Well, and you create that expectation from the other party or person that you're doing it to. And we see this with spouses a lot, or friends, like a community where that person keeps giving and giving and giving at the sake of their own, like they're exhausted, they don't want to, they really don't have time, and it's not in line with where they want to go. It's maybe where they have been or who they were. But like you said, once you identify yourself as that, then it's like you're comfortable hell.
Yeah. And then why would I fix it? Because at some level it does work, right? So if I'm in a relationship with you and I'm like, do all the things for Travis and make his bed and brush his teeth and you're like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like, my life is awesome. It works, right? So in that moment, it's like artificial connection or artificial love. Or to your point, I'm getting this artificial validation because you like it, I like it, I like it, you like it. But now I'm sacrificing my own needs. I'm potentially enabling you, which we see oftentimes for the people pleasers who are enabling their family, their kids, their business partners. Like, I'm actually teaching you how to treat me. So the more I people please you and enable you and put more on my plate over time, the more I teach you, hey, Travis, I'll do all the things for you.
Yeah. And it can create a codependency.
100%.
When you keep doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and like your example, and maybe more so with the kids as far as brushing my teeth or whatever.
But I'm giving an example
but
because
at some
true.
level,
Yep.
you've got to you want to do it for the love of your child, but at some level you have to step away and let them do it, even though you could. But when they're 15 or 20, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to feel the same, and you're disabling them from moving forward.
Yeah.
And that can be in friendships and in so many different situations, but on a, if you have kids, you can relate to that. At some point, you've got to let your child start to do the things that you used to do.
Yeah.
At first was healthy, and then it becomes unhealthy at a certain age.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why I would, right? If I'm a people pleaser, this is why I would keep doing it, because it's my instant gratification. So even if we're using the analogy of alcohol or some substance, right? I need to disconnect. In literally one glass of wine, I can get that need met versus a couple months of therapy, right? Or sitting with God, or like the healing process takes a long time. And so, oh man, if I just have another drink, or if I just work harder, or if I just pound the pavement, like I can get my instant gratification. So in people pleasing, I think it's the same way. In a moment, I can actually feel love, even though it's artificial. I do this for you. I can feel that artificial love or that instant gratification, but ultimately, like, that's not sustainable.
Yeah. And I've seen it in different situations financially, where people identify themselves. I'm just not good at that. I'm not good at managing my money. Well, no one was good at managing their money until they became good at managing their money. And so, but there's typically an enabling factor, whether it's the spouse or like a parent-kid relationship. At some level, you can't manage their finances when they're 30. And so at some level, you have to start for them to take ownership of their actions and be good at managing whatever that is. Or it could be food. I just, I get triggered and this is what I do. And so I revert back to eating unhealthy. And same thing, when you're shopping and you buy those foods for your spouse, knowing that they're not healthy, people pleasing.
Yeah.
And we did it with alcohol too.
Yeah.
Because time and time again, it was like we knew deep down at a core level that we were done with it and we needed to transition. But it was almost like this people, because I knew if you had a hard day, I could get a sense and energy from you or on the phone. And I'm like, okay, what would make her happy for the next 3 hours?
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you need anything? And it was like, well, yeah, since you're stopping, maybe a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And so we did it as opposed, knowing that it wasn't the right thing to do for you or me. And so it was like that codependency and that people pleasing for each other.
Well, and it's so funny that you're saying this, because if we look at, you're right. I think let's come back to this idea of like, I'm not good at it, so I'm just not even going to do it, because I think that could probably be a whole nother podcast. But I think that when we look at the root of people pleasing is that I'm trying to do something for you that fills a need for me, which ultimately the reason that I'm so frustrated is that I'm actually shouldn't be doing something for you that I should be able to do for me. Right? So like, again, if I'm people pleasing because I want your love or your validation or connection, or I have to be able to get that from me and God first before asking you to give me something that you weren't designed to give me. Right? And I think that there's a slippery slope, right? Because all of us would say that we have people in our world that we want to make their life a better place. Like, as a husband and wife, of course we want to do the things that are going to make each other happy and joyful. And as parents, so there's this slippery slope of once we cross the boundary line of the motivation of why we're doing what we're doing. And I think most of us are just living so unconscious, and now we're stuck in the identity of being a people pleaser and the patterns and routines of doing it, that we aren't even self-auditing ourselves and saying, what's my motive behind all the things that I'm doing for all the people in my life? Is it truly for them that I can't not, right? Which is sustainable. This is how you would know, like as I'm processing this verbally out loud. If I'm doing things for you that are sustainable, it's from the right motive, right? If I'm giving because I love you and I can't not give to you, it will be sustainable. If I'm giving to you because I expect you to say something back, or I'm giving to you but I'm going to burn out in 30 days, or I'm going to give to you and after 5 years I'm going to be resentful because you never loved me the same way, my motives are wrong.
Yeah. And most often, just like you said, like these different analogies and thoughts, like working out. It's like if we're codependent on each other, knowing like there has to be something in your life that you need to get over. Because if you keep doing it and you keep needing health in an unhealthy, sustainable way, then, and I keep coming along and helping you, it's like if you're doing bicep curls and you keep getting, you're lifting 50 pounds and you keep getting stuck, and I'm like, oh, Julie, don't worry about it, I'll do it. I can do it. You're never gonna grow past that and build the foundation to grow upon. And you can look at that in all areas of life. Like if you keep doing it at the sacrifice of yours, because I'm not always going to be there to help you change that or lift that. And so I think it comes back to there again, like it is nice to help, but if you start to do it at the sacrifice of you, and knowing that at some level that person needs to fix or change or adjust what they're needing and wanting for them to grow past that level.
Yeah. Well, and I think that then to the flip side of this, right? I think when we look at, well, part of why we keep doing what we're doing is it's giving us something, right? So if I'm really trying to unpack while I'm people pleasing and I don't want to people please, well, I have to go, well, what is it giving me, right? Because it's giving me something, otherwise I would stop doing it. So if it's either giving me artificial love, that's one thing. But if it's keeping me away from this idea of rejection or failure, right, or not being accepted in someone's mind, then if I follow that bunny trail, there's probably a lot of evidence that I've been rejected before, right? Mm-hmm. Like the one time I set a boundary that person, blew me off and disregarded me for the rest of their life. Or the one time that I leaned in and I said, hey, I'm going to speak my truth here, and I never heard from that person again. Or, like we also have a lot of evidence on the flip side of things that makes this seem risky to actually share our own needs and desires. Mm-hmm. Like if we look at the other side of that real quick, can you speak to that? If that's the reason now, as we're walking through this and someone says, I people please truly because I've said no before and hurt someone, or I've set a boundary before and it didn't work and now they're no longer in my life, or which you and I have actually a lot of evidence of this. What then?
I think you've got to be okay with the outcome. Like at the end of the day, whatever that is, if you're doing it at the sacrifice of you, there's a point where like you have to, and if you've had that experience, so you're getting triggered, you're thinking about that situation, you're not wanting that same situation to play out. One, you're living in the past. You're living at that one situation. And you've got to analyze it from a different perspective of like, okay, this is maybe what I could have done differently in that situation, but I'm starting to feel resentful. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. You get exhausted, you get resentful in the situation, especially with someone else that keep having to do something and they keep asking you and you keep saying yes with a smile on your face, but deep down inside you're like, I'm gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
And I think if you've had that same or similar situations, yes, you've got to potentially approach it differently, but I think you've got to communicate that. There again, if you were just to go to that person and say, hey, look, I love helping you out, I really do, but it's getting to the point where it's taking me away from my family. It's taking the energy and effort. I just can't do it as often. So I want you to know nothing's changed. I love you, but when I say yes, I'm all in. And when I say no, I want you to know it doesn't mean anything to you. At some level, however they take that and internalize that is up to them. But if you communicate, especially if you're in a situation where it's this ongoing, where someone's asking you or expecting something of you and you've changed but they haven't, you've got to let them in. You've got to let them in to know, hey, this is what's been going on in my mind. And we do that a lot too, because it's like something will happen, I've already come up with something else, I talk to you and you're like, whoa, that's new to me.
Let me also say this for any one of you whose husband's talking Cliff Notes. Travis talking Cliff Notes. So what we have learned about ourselves and each other while doing this awkwardly, I mean, I think the key to communication is being okay with the awkward, like doing it not good until it is good. So to your point of anytime we find her go, well, I'm not good at communication, which you and I hear all the time from people. We're like, well, belly up and get good at it. Like what's the alternative? And we have to be okay with, you and I looking back have had a lot of hard, awkward, not good conversations on our way to getting good at it. To the point that now Travis and I know that he talks in Cliff Notes because he thinks and processes so much that when it finally comes out of his mouth, he gives me 7 words of his 70,000 that he's been playing out his head. So sometimes I look at him like, oh my gosh, 7. I'm trying to keep up with all. And he looks at me like, did you not understand what I'm saying? And I'm like, nope, it was not a part of the 70,000 word process. Where I've had to say to you, here's my 70,000 word process, and you're scrambling to find the truth in it all, and I'm contradicting myself, and I'm saying all these things, which now you hold space so much better when I'm like, hey, here comes my 70,000 word download, and you're like, great, let me know when you land on a few bullet points, But I think the other thing that you said in there is I think that resentment word is super interesting because as I've leaned into that word, because I've heard so many of those clients who are people-pleasing for all the wrong reasons say, well, now I'm getting resentful. Here's the hard truth. Resentment is on you. That's not on that person. Resentment is because you're not holding your boundaries. You're not, owning your stake in the game. Like, resentment isn't because, well, they just never listened to me. No, resentment is on you because you keep giving them the power. You keep giving them the boundary line. You keep, giving them right, what they need and not holding true to your own wants and needs. So resentment to me always tells me you've let down your boundary line, not someone else.
Yeah. And it's going back to, I think it is so, it's the ownership of like, I'm going to take ownership because they don't make me feel that way. I make myself feel that way by my actions and committing to something that I don't want to anymore.
So let's walk this out for just a second, because Travis will say this to me too, and sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't. But I will say, well, I would have this conversation with someone, but I feel like they make me feel not good enough. Mm-hmm. And what do you always tell me?
Suck it up.
After that. He always says to me,
they don't make you feel that way.
Nobody can make you feel that way. And I go, yes, they do, because they don't do this and they do this and they send me text messages like this and they say all this, and he still looks at me just the way he's looking at me right now. And he'll say, I hear you. Best thing we could say to any human being we're in a conversation with. I hear you. And nobody has the power to make you feel any other way than you feel.
Yeah, and we can peel that back a little bit later, another layer. It's missed expectations. Because you set an expectation of what you want and how you want them to respond. And then when you have that conversation, they don't. And then that's when it's the missed expectations, and then you feel resentful. And like, it's just a kind of a spiraling effect. So there again, coming back to the conversation, if it is, let's just give context. It is a situation, you keep committing to something that you no longer want to commit to. It's having that conversation. It may be awkward and uncomfortable, but at least you have it out there. Is it probably multiple conversations? Yes. If you want to cultivate that relationship and let them know, hey, here's what I've been thinking. Let's circle back around so you can kind of plant the seed. And this is what we do too. I give you the Cliff Note version. You go mull it over and think about it. And then we come back together. We have another conversation. And it could be multiple conversations before. It's almost like a ball. If you drop a ball from a high level, it bounces, it gets smaller and smaller until you find that middle ground and you can kind of roll together.
And then I think to your point, which is what you said, is that at some level, I have to be okay with the outcome. The ball analogy, you guys, is brilliant. And ultimately, once that ball drops, it's going to have a pretty big bounce up again. And that could look like emotions are everywhere, people trigger, we aren't on the same page, all the things. But if we stick with that whole process, we ultimately have to be okay with the outcome. And where I've seen this firsthand in my own life is a very deep relationship that I remember a year ago now. I knew that if I really lean in here and share my heart, my emotions, my frustrations, my fears, my dreams about what this relationship could be, that there was a chance this person would still not be in my life. Now, I could also take the alternative. I could people please. I could say what I thought this person needed to hear. I could say exactly what I thought this person would need to hear to stick around. I could do all of those things, which I had done for the last 4 years. Or I could sit long enough with it and go, I have to be okay with the outcome. And so I could keep faking it and people pleasing and pretending out of love, because I wanted love in this relationship. Or I could come to the core of my fears, my dreams, my worries, all the awkward. I just have to be okay with the outcome. So I chose that outcome. I really want to be okay with creating a relationship that we can do the hard things well together. Here we are a year later, and that person still is out of my life. They did not choose to engage. They did not want to participate in my life. They didn't even respond to my conversation. So I share that because I think you're right. We have to be okay with the outcome. And what I ultimately had to surrender was, I don't know what I would do with myself if I keep faking this. If I keep pretending, if I keep doing my own version of people pleasing here, this won't land well. So I have to be as true to what I want as possible and be okay if I'm rejected. Still cried, still had my emotions, still went through the roller coaster, but I can honestly say that I stand before you today with that door still open. Like, that person could walk back into my life and like, it would be the same conversation. Like, we're going to pick up from exactly where we left off, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And there again, going back to the ball analogy, you drop the ball and it's just, the ball in this situation bounced pretty high and pretty far. If they come back, is it going to be this smooth landing? No, because you're probably going to have to talk about all the things that were said. And there again, then you may need to take some time away again and then reconvene and again and reconvene. And then until it gets easier and easier. And then it's like a dance of like, okay, I know where you stand, you know where I stand. Is it always going to be what I want and meet my expectations? No, but I'm not going to take it personally because we've weeded back and forth and got to that more normalized neutral ground of I know who you are and what you want now. You know who I am and what I want. And that's okay. And it's made me, should be stronger and made you better and stronger. Yeah. And so absolutely.
Well, and I think
and if that person doesn't in any situation, because we've had this in other areas, if they bounce and never come back, it's probably for a reason. Yeah. Could you have done certain things differently? Probably always. Yep. But at the end of the day, maybe it's limiting you from fully going in the direction you need to go. And unfortunately, people and friendships, that's part of this journey of life, of like certain people are in your life for certain seasons and times. The people that you love and you want in your life, hopefully you can battle and have those conversations and, intense fellowship is what we call it, with other people too. But it's up to them to take it however they're going to take it. Well, and you can't take that burden on.
I think that what you just said would give us, right? Okay, so if I'm going to lay down people pleasing, right? So again, the reason that an addict will go back to any addiction, we'll call today's addiction people pleasing. If I'm going to lay down people pleasing, the only reason I'm going to go back to that is because I didn't fill it with something else. So I think the thing that we need to fill it with is true connection, which is the goal of a relationship. So you had made the comment, at the end of every bounce, at the end of every conversation, the goal for both of us has been, I need to know you better, which also means I need to know your fears better, your triggers better, the things that upset you better, missed expectations, as well as I want to know your dreams and your desires and your goals and your wins. I equally need to understand all the hard things too, right? That's the goal of a relationship, is connection. So the bounce is important because I'm actually learning connection in each bounce with you, as opposed to, oh my gosh, he doesn't love me, or oh, he's going to leave me. No, could it be that in every conversation, I'm actually getting closer and closer and closer to you because I'm not only connecting to you, I'm connecting to me. And a me connected to me and a you connected to you actually brings two connected people together. Right? So I think that if we lay down people pleasing, which is artificial connection, then we can actually pick up true connection and be okay that if not everybody wants to connect, or they don't want to do the awkward dance, or they don't want to have the hard conversations or talk about the elephant in the room, then at some level, which is what you and I have done, which is why I think we run this lane out pretty well, is then you're probably not our people. Because I want to do the hard well with the people in our inner circle, because it's not a matter of if we're going to fail or miss each other's expectations. It's just a matter of when. Yeah. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. And it comes back to, it's so easy to live surfacey.
100%.
And so with that, as opposed to having the conversations and the hard conversations, it's easy to live that kind of surfacey and, talk about the things at some level that don't really matter. And to go deeper than that, it's vulnerable. Like you have to open up a little bit and sometimes say, I don't know. Like I don't have the answer, because at some level, and I think most people, like, I feel like I should know all the answers in every situation, which is a weird concept, because you don't. There's so much information out there. There's so many things to learn and try and do. And it's like with relationships or whatever it may be in your life, it's like we have this dynamic of like thinking we need to have it all together, as opposed to coming to the table of like, look, like here's the situation. I don't know. I want to talk it out. Yeah. Here's a few thoughts that I have, but how do we make this better? But I keep committing, I keep doing something that is really starting to make me feel a certain way, and it's going to make me push away from you or resent you, and I don't want to. So I want to bring it up now.
Well, and it's so funny because for everybody who's sitting there going, well, that's easy for you, Travis, because you're a good communicator, or I'm just not good at communicating. Our 8-year-old has figured this out. So this was months ago that you and I started to notice that Malachi was having these mixed expectations, but we could only see the look of disappointment on his face. Or Malachi's a very joyful kid, but when all of a sudden he gets real solemn, you and I are like, ugh, like we in a moment, we don't like that for him on many reasons. Anyways, regardless of that. So one of us in conversation happened to say to him, oh, buddy, is this just a missed expectation? Which of course he said, what does that mean? And we talked this out with him of saying, this is when you thought the kid was going to say this and you said that and he said this and it did not match what you thought he was going to say. And Malachi was able to say like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. So we walked him through this process. Fast forward, last week he goes with us to a family's house to go play. And I can tell about halfway into our time playing, he's got that same look on his face.
Yep.
So I said, hey, buddy, come on over here. And I said, what's going on? And he looks at me and he says, I have a missed expectation. And I felt tears well up in my eyes because instantly my posture changed. Because at first I was kind of like, going to put on the play well and, just, give him the sign language. That's like, I'm watching you do the right thing, that I will own. I can kind of be as a mom, like, do better. And I hear him say that. And instantly I said, oh, buddy, tell me more. He walked out. I thought I was going to play this way. I thought that they were going to engage like this, and they're not. And I said, oh, man, I totally get it. And I said, so what was your heart for tonight? He's like, I just wanted to have fun. That's the desired outcome. Yeah. Okay, so you want to have fun. So how could we now have fun in a different way? Does it make it any easier? Probably not. Did he still have to hunker down and find his fun bone? Yes, all those things. But it was that enlightened conversation from an 8-year-old that you're like, if he can figure that out, any of us can figure that out. Any of us.
100%. And I think if you are the type of person, or you're saying to yourself, I didn't grow up that way, I didn't either. I grew up in a family, awesome family, but we didn't communicate like that. And still today, it's better because we've worked on it. But I didn't grow up in a family where we communicated about our feelings or thoughts, or here's what here's the expectation I have, and we didn't grow up in that. But what I was committed to is the end result. And I wanted a family that we could create, that we have those, where our 8-year-old can come to us and say, hey, look, we see that he's sad. We can go to him and say, hey, bud, what's wrong? And he's able to articulate, hey, I just had this expectation. Great. Now we can communicate and work it through.
So good.
Like, that is what we wanted. And so seeing those pieces, you start to see it and you're like, wow, like that's really cool. He's 8. Wait till he's 16.
Oh, man.
And he can have these conversations, and when he comes to us and or with his spouse or his friends and understand what he wants and why he's feeling this way.
Totally.
So if you're saying to yourself, I didn't grow up this way, it's just practice, like with anything. It's having that first awkward conversation, and the conversation may go something like, I don't know exactly what to say, but I feel like I need to say something. So, are you open for feedback? Are you open for a conversation around this topic?
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because we were at the gymnastics the other day with the kids. And, I think we hear all the time that practice makes perfect, which is a bunch of crap. That is not true. We're not aiming for perfection here. But on this, there's this big sign that says practice makes permanent. And I thought that was really interesting because the more I practice good communication, the more I'm going to make good communication a permanent practice in my life. The more I practice people pleasing or not communicating or whatever it is, the more I'm still practicing something, it will continue to make that permanent. So the goal of this practice is pick what you're going to practice, because that practice will make permanent emotionally, literally in the brain, right? The pathways in the brain, in a relationship. And so I think that for anyone, as we're closing out on this podcast, I think that, Travis, you've said it so many different ways, but is truly my wholehearted suggestion for people that are running up against people pleasing is that you have to get clear on what is my end result with this relationship. Because if I keep people pleasing because I need love or connection or validation, then my end goal, to your point, is I want a marriage that is strong in communication. There's my end goal. I want friendships that do the deep waters. There's my end goal. I want communication with my family that is fun and connected. That's the end goal. Like, we almost have to back up a few steps and go, what is my end goal here with this relationship, with my business, with whatever that is? What is it? And then how can I actually lean in on these moments that I want to people please and start practicing towards that end goal?
Yeah, and absolutely. Sorry to interrupt you as you're saying this, but like in a business partner relationship, or if you work for someone, like really think about that, because we know so many different situations, and we've been in ourselves, and some have worked out and some have not, and the ones that have not have kind of been a blessing in disguise.
Totally. Well, and it's funny that you're saying this, because I have a girlfriend who we've actually said our end goal results to each other in those moments that, like, hey, you haven't called, and we can make the story and the narrative and all the things. And we've been able to say to each other, hey, our end goal here is to be friends until we're 80 years old. That's the end goal. Like, good friends, to do the deep well, to do the hard well, to celebrate the wins with each other, to forgive when we forget birthdays and Christmases, to say, hey, I'm feeling neglected by you, or hey, a little too much, like give me a little space. We've actually said those things because at some level you're like, I'm either going to say this and we're going to work on this together, or we're not, and I get to cut off the energy here.
Yep. And then you can read their mail, because then if they come to you and say, oh, I've just been busy. Nope.
Remember the conversation that we had?
No, because a text, a quick phone call, you're never too busy for the people that are that important to you. And so you can start to then call each other out.
Totally.
You read the mail, and then you call them out and say, I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
And based off of our previous conversations.
Totally. And this is, you guys, this is worth the price of admission right now. So if you want to know how my friend and I did this, we had this big conversation. We ended up there again where weeks had gone on. We didn't. So she says to me, what if we just dropped, because I said, you have to understand, I have 5 children, and I'm changing poopy diapers, and I'm building this business. I'm doing all these things. And she goes, I got it. I said, what? She goes, will you just send me poop emojis? And I was like, yeah, I will. So I kid you not, probably a couple times a month, we will just send each other poop emojis, and we both instantly know we're right there. We're doing this together. We're on our journey to be 80-year-olds sitting on the porch laughing about all the things. And some days all you get is a poop emoji, but that poop emoji means everything.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes we take these we go, oh my gosh, we have to have a 17-hour long conversation and coffee and all the things that are bought. No, sometimes it's just hey, regroup here. Poop emoji, love you, get on the same page again, don't do the people pleasing, don't do the avoidancing, like get back to the end result and keep running after that. So if all you get out of today is poop emoji your friends, do that.
Or maybe a fist bump or a thumbs up or something.
Oh man, but here's what we're gonna leave you with today, is that we truly want to see every single one of you chasing after the dreams that God has given you this year. And so as you're en route, we hope you join us on this journey as we quit the things that don't serve us. Quit people pleasing, quit the artificial connection, and join us as we lean in and we ask ourselves and the world around us to give us good, meaningful connection.
Yes.